Hi everybody, welcome back. Glad you could tune in again. Okay, I want to get straight into the book of Ruth today and start thinking about these distinctive character traits which, though in some senses applicable both to men and women, are highlighted here as being specifically of relevance either to men or, in this case today, I want to start with a character trait which is identified very strongly with Ruth. It's one of the most appealing and attractive things about her personality as a believer in the living God. And here's what it is. She absolutely refuses to allow herself to be defined as a victim. No matter how terrible her circumstances are, no matter how unlucky, as Calvin wouldn't have put it, her lot may have been in life, she refuses to see herself simply as the object of other people's actions or as the victim of circumstances beyond her control. And although the circumstances are beyond her control, she takes up the responsibility that she's got to look after her mother-in-law. She trusts in the living God and she seeks to do what she can by his strength, by the living God's enabling, to provide for herself and for Naomi. Let me explain where this comes in the narrative. You remember the story as it unfolds. End of chapter 1, the two women, Naomi and Ruth, arrive back in Bethlehem. Everyone recognises Naomi because she's been gone years and years, but you don't forget your friends that easily. And she arrives back and everyone says, "Can this be Naomi?" And Naomi overhears what they're saying. "Don't call me Naomi," she says. "Call me Mara." And there's a word play with the names here because Naomi means sweet or sweetness or pleasant, and Mara, means bitter or bitterness. And this reflects how Naomi sees her circumstances, and she's unable to see beyond her circumstances. The Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me, she says. And then when she's called to when she continues talking, she can only reflect on the negative aspects of her circumstances. And there are plenty of negative aspects to her circumstances, but she blames the Lord for them. The Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full and the Lord has brought me back empty. And she has indeed lost a very great deal. She's lost her husband. She's lost her two sons. She's lost her home twice. You can understand why she feels so grieved, why she feels so heartbroken. And you can almost understand the bitterness, and that's the word she uses, that comes pouring out of her heart and out of her mouth as she describes her circumstances. And then in contrast with that, it's truly astonishing to observe how Ruth responds. Remember, Ruth is, if anything, in worse circumstances. At least Naomi has some history here. At least Naomi has some friends and some property, it appears, here. Ruth has nothing, apart from a grumpy mother-in-law, who is, frankly, right now not going to be doing very much to look after herself or her, and therefore it's going to fall to Ruth to take responsibility to keep them alive if they're going to live, and that's exactly what she does. Take a look with me at chapter 2, verse 2, and see what happens. Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favour." She clearly realises, perhaps because she's heard from Naomi's family over the years, that there's some law about gleaning which makes it possible perhaps to scrape together enough grains of barley to make a loaf of bread in the evening if you work hard from dawn till dusk. And so she says, "Let me go and seek to provide." And she refuses to feel sorry for herself. She refuses to see herself as a victim of circumstances. She instead sees herself not as the object of other people's action, but as the subject of an unfolding new chapter in her life. She doesn't know where this is going to end up. She doesn't know whether or not she's going to spend the next 40, 50 years every single day on hands and knees in the field, scraping together with broken, bleeding fingernails enough bits of barley and dirty grains and husks of wheat to make a tiny loaf for her and for her ungrateful mother-in-law. She doesn't know whether or not that's going to be her lot. She doesn't know the end of the story as we read it, but nonetheless, she gets up and she seeks, by the grace of God, to make the best of terrible circumstances. I think it's really remarkable, actually. It's one of the things which the men who are also working in the field, when Boaz comes along, the conversation ensues between Boaz and his workers, and they have noticed this about her. Notice in verse 6, the servant who's in charge of the reapers replied to Boaz's initial question, whose young woman is this? He replied, she's the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please let me glean among the sheaves after the reapers. And she came and she's continued from early morning until now, except for one short rest. They remark on her hard work, her diligence, and the fact, obviously, that she's the companion of Naomi and therefore is presumably providing for her. It's the thing that they find so remarkable about her, and it is remarkable. It is remarkable whenever you see anybody in less than perfect circumstances not feeling sorry for themselves. Especially in our day, actually, when the tendency is increasingly to exaggerate our circumstances. Actually, we saw this a little in our previous devotions about dealing with disagreements and also about the Black Lives Matter movement. We saw, when we were thinking about disagreements, the tendency to exaggerate other people's positions in order to make them look bad and make us look good. Well, it's possible not just to exaggerate other people's arguments, but to exaggerate our own plight and make things out to be worse than they really are. And in subtle ways, this has taken hold in today's culture, and in ways that I think it's possible for Christians to be affected by. For example, have you noticed how the word violence has started to be used to refer not just to physical violence, which is what the word has always meant for hundreds of years, but to words? Words are violence now, it seems, when I find them painful or unpleasant or when I just don't agree with them. In fact, we're even told nowadays that silence is violence. If you refuse to sign up to the agenda of, let's say, the Black Lives Matter movement or some other movement influenced by critical theory, you may well be accused of violence. That is, the same vocabulary will be used of your silence as is used of the acts of physical aggression that the movement seeks to stand against. You see, what's happening here is that there's a tendency to use the word violence in this more extended way, which dramatically exaggerates the experience. I have to say, standing watching somebody not saying anything is not to be a victim of violence. To be a victim of violence is when somebody smacks you over the head with a wooden beam or a metal pole or something. That's of being a victim of violence. Not just witnessing somebody not joining in with your sloganeering. But interestingly, we find other words, pain and anguish and trauma, are used nowadays in ways which indicate a more extended emotional sense. And it's not that those applications of the words are entirely illegitimate, but let's be aware of the danger of exaggerating our plight, exaggerating the seriousness of our situation, or of exaggerating our inability to do anything about it when we're faced with the example of somebody like Naomi, who absolutely refuses to be a victim. I will not be a victim of circumstance, she says. I will do the little I can. Excruciatingly painful, though it may be, actually physically painful and dangerous, in Bethlehem in the days of the judges, and unrewarding, and for all I know, thankless and unnoticed, I will just do what I can to provide for Naomi, my mother-in-law, of whom, of course, she'd said, your people will be my people, and your God my God, and far be it from me if anything but death separates me from you. She's committed herself to Naomi, and this is what that commitment now means. She refuses to be a victim. I think that's one of the most remarkable characteristics of her as her character unfolds in the book. And it's clearly one of the things that Boaz notices about her. We'll see that a little bit later on. But for now, the Lord bless you and hope very much to see you soon. Bye for now.